party people! Well, welcome once again to the Party of One podcast, the actual play RPG podcast where the gaming table is always set for two. I am your host as always, Jeff Stormer, and this week on the show, I am joined by my good friend Jess Levine for a game of Galactic Going Rogue 2nd Edition. Going Rogue is a GM-less tabletop role-playing game for 2 to 5 players, originally designed as an expansion for Riley Rethal's Star Wars-inspired Belonging Outside Belonging game Galactic, whereas Galactic tells the story of larger-than-life heroes battling the Mandate. Going Rogue tells the story of the messy, ugly, compromised world of people actually doing the work behind the scenes to bring down an overwhelmingly powerful menace. It is stories of sacrifice and stories of compromise. It is messy spy stories inspired by movies like Rogue One, and it absolutely kicks ass. I love Going Rogue so much. When Jess approached me and said there was going to be a 2nd edition time for the release of Andor on Disney+, I was thrilled. I was so excited to sit down and play with this game, and we very quickly came up with a big, silly idea that I think turned into something truly, truly special that you hear on the episode. You see, you've heard us play Going Rogue once before when the game came out originally, and today's episode, in honor of Andor, which is a prequel to Rogue One, is a prequel to that original Going Rogue game, and it specifically explores some of the changes that came about in Galactic Rogue 2nd Edition, including the addition of a brand new playbook, The Loyal, a character endlessly, passionately devoted to another character in the party, and a new setting element, The Bond, that represents the deep, unshakable connection that these two players share. The game is incredible. It tells the exact sorts of messy spy stories that are so close to my heart. I love this game a whole lot. I really think you should check it out. The game has just dropped today on itch.io. You can find that at jessfromonline.itch.io or check the show notes for more information. For the next week after the release of this episode and the game, there is a bundle available where you can pick up both Galactic and Going Rogue for one low price. It's a great deal. You should go check it out. You can find more information in the show notes. One quick note before we dive in, a special thank you to our newest backers on Patreon, Kevin Gallagher, Daniel Alistair Osborne, and Scooby-Doo's dad. I appreciate all of your support for the show. Patreon backers get early access to episodes, ad-free access to episodes, bonus content such as Party of None, which is the single-player actual play I have been threatening to make for the last 5 years and am finally in active production on, and more. You can find more information for all of that at patreon.com/JeffStormer or ko-fi.com/JeffStormer. And finally, before we dive in, hi, Present Jeff here, with a little bit of a plug for the show. So here's the deal. Starting October 1st through the end of the year 2022, we are going to be running a Patreon pledge drive for a pretty simple goal. We'd like to pay our guests more for their time, and Jen and I would like to be paid a little bit for our time in producing the show. Both of those things are immediately achievable through Patreon support. And so we're launching a pledge drive. We're reworking our Patreon and Ko-fi membership tiers. We've got some exclusive Patreon shows to debut starting in October. And we've got some fun milestone tiers set up, some crossover episodes with other podcasts, some live shows, some first episode pilots to debut, some sequel episodes to Party of One. A lot of cool stuff is in the works, and all of it is created in an effort to encourage people to back the Patreon and help us grow the show, pay our guests a little bit more for their time, pay ourselves a little bit for our time, and just do more cool shit. And so I hope you'll check those out starting October 1st at patreon.com/JeffStormer or ko-fi.com/JeffStormer. All right, let's get back to the show. And with all that said, let's go ahead and throw it over to me in the past so that he can get started with the show. Take it past me. Thanks, future me. I could not be more excited. The more we've talked about this episode, the more excited I have been. I could not be more excited to be sitting down with Jess Levine. Jess, thank you so much for coming back on Party of One.
Jeff, thank you for having me again. I can't tell you how much I love recording episodes on here, so I'm really excited for this.
I'm so excited for today's recording. The more we have talked about it and the more I have learned about what this recording is going to be, the more excited I have gotten. Why don't you take a moment to let our lovely listeners at home know about what we are playing this week, as well as anything else you've got going on that you might want them to know about.
Yeah, so we are playing Going Rogue 2nd Edition. The first edition of Going Rogue released last year, and in fact, the very first actual play of it that was ever recorded was on Party of One. And I decided that next month, coinciding coincidentally around the Andor show, the Cassian Andor television show, I'm going to release a second edition because Going Rogue is a game inspired by Star Wars Rogue One. It's an expansion for Riley Rethel's Galactic 2E, which Riley describes as Star Wars with the serial numbers filed off, and which has also appeared on Party of One. And the thing is, the base game is fantastic, and
it's so good. It's really good.
It's incredible. My party that plays Galactic, we've written 150,000 words of short fiction in our Galactic universe with our characters because we fell so in love with it.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah, no, it honestly changed my life. It's part of why I make games. So Galactic is fantastic. And I loved it so much. And Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars. And so I wanted to try and tell a story like that. And one of the things that I discovered is that Galactic is really well built to tell the stories of like larger than life, charming but flawed heroes. And that's not exactly the stories that Going Rogue is telling. Going Rogue tells the stories of like troubled martyrs being like ready to sacrifice and give their lives. And it has a bit of a darker tone, and it has a bit more like really strong and like high stakes character conflict. And so I said, I want to write a new set of playbooks that could be used to tell a story similar to Rogue One. And that's how Going Rogue happened. There was a game jam for Galactic 2E expansions, and I was like, cool, we're going to make Rogue One into a tabletop game. And it was awesome. I'm so happy with how it turned out, but I always had dreams to do like a little bit more with it. It was Game Jam. I only had so much time. So at release, it had 4 playbooks, and we'll talk about what those are, and 2 pillars, and that was pretty much it. So now, for the second edition, I'm adding an additional playbook that you'll get to see today called The Loyal, and it comes with its own pillar, and the base Galactic system also has things that you give to NPCs to give them moves called traits, and now I've added some Going Rogue specific traits, and just a whole bunch more text for like how to get the most out of your Going Rogue game. So, in a nutshell, what we've got is a game inspired by Rogue One, that is about the tension between survival and sacrifice, between democracy and decisiveness, between cynicism and hope, all of these like lofty ideals that are constantly in tension with each other. It's about exploring those through a game of Star Wars, but belonging outside belonging system. And this is the second edition with all sorts of new content that we'll get to show today.
I'm so excited. And specifically to talk a little bit more about what we're doing today, because you pitched this to me, and because I am me, and it is never just enough to do one thing, we have to do 3 things. So today we are playing, this is a playtest of 2nd edition. This is specifically the first playtest of Going Rogue 2nd edition, which I'm very excited about. So if we talk a little bit more mechanically about the nuts and bolts of the game, that's what you're hearing. And also the other half of this is we are playing a prequel episode to our last session. So I'm going to be bringing back my spy playbook character. I'm going to be bringing back Torch Saflam. I'm going to be bringing back Torch to show this character in a slightly different light a little bit earlier in his career. And we're going to build out our bond and our loyal playbook, and then play out a scene with this with these characters to test out the new mechanics. And I'm really excited to see like how a no dice, no master, like this is the first time on the show we're really like digging into like what happens when you pick up the same characters or like one of the same characters in the same worlds and setting elements. And I'm very excited to do that live on the show today.
It's the most Star Wars thing too. Like a prequel. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Star Wars are like, it's prequels. Like, it's prequels all the way down, and I could not be more excited to dig into this.
When you suggested that to me, I was just like, this suddenly got 10 times cooler.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad, because I felt the exact same way.
And it's really neat to get to do this, like, playtest with you. Playtesting is always, like, a really sensitive thing for me a lot of the time, and I'm feeling a little more confident because, you know, it's a released game. This is just, like, 2nd edition, new content, but playtesting's tough, and I think a lot about another quote I heard about game design on a podcast that I can't currently remember, but about how like game design is playtesting. If you've written something but you haven't playtested, what you have is an idea that you've written down, and playing it and then seeing what happens is how it becomes a game. And so I just think it's really valuable for people who want to make games, and I think anyone who wants to should make games, to get to see what it's like to play a thing and go, does this work? Does it not work? So I'm really excited just to get to do that with you live here.
I'm thrilled. I could not be more excited. So why don't we go ahead and dive in? We'll map out our characters and setting elements. So I'm going to hand you the reins. Talk us through what you want us to cover down on in the order that you want us to dig into.
Yeah, absolutely. So the real 30-second version of the game, it's Belonging Outside Belonging, which is a system made by Avery Alder and Benjamin Rosenbaum. And so we will each choose a playbook from the 5 available playbooks, and that'll help us form our character. We will also set up some pillars. Pillars are what Belonging Outside Belonging calls setting elements, but in Galactic they're called pillars, and these represent parts of the environment that can then act on our characters, and because it's a GM-less game, we inhabit those pillars. Galactic has 4 pillars, which are the space between, scum and villainy, the mandate, and the liberation, and we'll talk about what each are, but then Going Rogue adds the parliament and the intelligence, and the very special thing today, and what I want to hone in on, the loyal and the bond. The loyal is a new playbook, and it is inspired by K2SO, actually, and a little bit also by Baze and Chirrut, but I'll get back to that. And it is about a character who feels particularly attached to another player character. And the bond is a pillar representing their relationship. So in the same way that the forces of evil in the mandate, or all of the criminals or the mysterious force are a setting element, that bond between these two and potentially eventually more characters is a separate element that exists in the environment and acts. And this was an idea that Seda, who's come on as a design consultant for the 2nd edition, had of just what if you represented it in a setting element, in a pillar? I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. I've never seen Belonging Outside Belonging do that, right?
It's so cool. It's I was reading through it. You shared the actual pillar and the playbook, the loyal, and the pillar, the bond. You shared those with me, and I was reading through them, and that, and the addition of the addition of characters having moves that are specifically tied to that bond is so unbelievably cool.
Thank you. I'm really excited to test it out and see how it works, because this will be the first time. So yeah, that's the main setup. So we will pick our playbooks, but in this case we've already picked, and we will fill them out, and we will also fill out the pillars. Specifically, in Going Rogue, I recommend you start with 2 of the pillars. You start with the Parliament and the Intelligence, which are the new pillars in Going Rogue, and then you do your playbooks, and then you go back and do the pillars from the base game. So, if that's okay with you, I want to hop right into the Parliament and the Intelligence, and then we do our characters. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Awesome. So, for the character playbooks, we'll go ahead and read the short descriptions under them. And for the base game pillars, we won't take the time to read all of it, but for the Parliament and the Intelligence, it is, if I'm just being straight up, the proudest I am of any writing in Going Rogue. So if you will indulge me in reading them, even though it was read in the previous episode.
I would ask nothing less. You've read my mind over the exact things that I want read. So if you would like to read one of them, I will read the other, and then we'll choose our desires and work through them.
Awesome. Okay, so I will start with the Parliament, and then you do the Intelligence.
That sounds great.
Cool. You also play the Parliament. A revolution is nothing without its democracy. The Parliament represents a diverse range of forces, factions, and commitments, joining together to try and negotiate their differences and devise a plan that they can all share. At its best, the Parliament is a comradely collectivity and an example of how a more just galaxy would be governed. Sadly, democracy is not without its discontents. The Parliament is often slow to action, even when the situation calls for decisiveness. It can be conservative and conciliatory, aiming to keep the peace and avoid risk, when only daring action can move the galaxy to freedom. At its worst, the Parliament is a wrench caught in the gears of liberation.
That's so good. It's really it's very good is the thing.
Thank you. Do you want to read the Intelligence now? They're sort of set up in parallel.
Absolutely. You also play the intelligence. A revolution is nothing without its might. It is the liberation's spies that enable its small fleet to succeed against a vast enemy. The intelligence is a clandestine network and messy hierarchy of burdened people who do whatever it takes to rid the galaxy of the mandate. At its best, the intelligence can turn a guaranteed defeat into a galaxy-inspiring victory. Sadly, intelligence work is not without its iniquities. It is possible to do great evils in pursuit of justice and difficult to walk that line without treading over it. Those in Liberation Intelligence position themselves to avoid oversight and accountability whenever possible, and are not above hurting those with good intentions. At its worst, intelligence corrupts the ethical and democratic principles that distinguish the Liberation and the Mandate.
Thank you. So, an important thing I explained in the beginning in the design that I'll mention briefly is that neither the Parliament nor the intelligence are the bad guys. The Parliament aren't the bad guys for making you sit down in a meeting and actually talk about it before acting, and the intelligence aren't the bad guys for saying, actually, we just need to do this, and I know it sucks and there's going to be consequences, but we have to. It is about the tension between those two forces and how you actually act to create a better world and whether those actions will make the world better in the end. It's a tension between these two forces, so let's choose their desires and see how that tension plays out.
That sounds good.
So, the Parliament has a number of desires that you can choose between. We'll pick 3 of these: consensus, caution, guaranteed victories, cross-class alliances, forces in reserve, popular support for the liberation, peace through compromise, a dream that never dies, lengthy deliberation, safety from retribution for the innocent, and ideological discourse. I will say really briefly that, like you said at the top, we're doing something pretty different, which is where we have 2 characters already established and a world established, and then we're doing a prequel much earlier. So we'll probably want to draw upon some of the story ideas we already had in that and talk about where are they in this earlier time? How does it resemble that?
That's exactly kind of what I was thinking as I'm looking through this, and I know that I believe that like I know we chose lengthy deliberation last time. And maybe, I think what I'd like to propose is I want to maybe choose a different desire from lengthy deliberation that maybe, and this is as we kind of start to kind of kick into sort of the idle dreaming, the sort of imagining scenes and pitching storylines. I think what would be cool, and like if I'm visualizing a prequel to the story we told last time, if this is a parliament that is in the process of becoming sort of choked by that deliberation. Like if this is a parliament that like is slowly becoming longer winded, that is really like a compelling place for a prequel to exist in.
Yes, very like Galactic Senate in the first in the prequels.
Yeah.
I imagine either ideological discourse or caution would both like lend itself to a slowing.
I like ideological discourse a lot. I like that because that idea that like people feel strongly about this, and then over time that calcifies into we have to map out all of these possibilities. Because like that also paints us in the very early phases of this of the liberation and of this kind of this parliament, like this parliamentary movement.
Totally.
And that is very compelling. So I might say that our second one is, I think, like a very nice like balance to that is maybe a dream that never dies. Is that idea of, you know, the idea that these people feel so strongly about this that at this moment this discourse is loud, it is aggressive, it is occasionally violent, like it is fierce, but it is fierce because of a desire of like, we believe that this is what we must be doing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for the last one, I'm leaning either cross-class alliances or popular support for the liberation, because if we're imagining this being pretty early in the liberation, then I think what the parliament is about, like sometimes you're telling a story in Going Rogue that is like, we have to survive. Like the parliament is cautious because it doesn't want to die out. But in this case, it's because it wants to grow, right? Like it needs to find the support that is going to make it big.
And that was very much the story we told last time, was like the parliament is this large sort of behemoth thing that needed to be moved around. the idea of picturing that there's a real tragedy that comes from picturing the early days of that, where it is like a movement that has potential that becomes its own enemy in time.
Yes. Do you think
sick.
cross-class alliances or popular support for the liberation, either of those captures that better?
I think popular support for the liberation is really what I'm leaning on. That idea that like the three of those together, popular support for the liberation, a dream that never dies, and ideological discourse. This is firebrand. These are firebrands, right? Like this is a movement. This is a movement that is going to move the galaxy as long as it stays focused. And the tragedy is that like we've seen the last time that it loses that focus.
Yes, we go from the young dreamers who are like huge ideologues to the people like stymied by their own values and ideas.
Yeah.
Awesome. And also popular support for the liberation is the one desire that I added for second edition. So it feels good to naturally fall in.
That feels good.
Cool. Before we go on to the intelligence, I'm realizing we keep referring back to this previous episode. Would you mind if I gave just like a 30, 45-second version of some of those events?
You mean a Star Wars crawl? Yes, give us a Star Wars crawl.
Oh my god, absolutely, it's a Star Wars crawl. Let me get myself in that mood. 20 years ahead. No, not 20. We said it like built up, right? 10 years? Mm-hmm. 10 years ahead?
10 feels good. 10 feels good.
Okay. 10 years from now, the universe will be at a crossroads. The liberation has gained in size and strength, but its own internal divisions have stalled it and kept it from being where it needs to go. Our story will follow two individuals, a spy and a guardian in touch with the space between, who once fought to protect people and now fights because she doesn't know what else to do. This spy, under the direction of the Liberation Intelligence, needs to bring people like our lost knight into the liberation and into the work that will finally end this long war. The two will be deployed onto a space station where they are to meet with criminals. Little do they know, those criminals have already been tipped to their arrival. The ruthless spy, Torch Saflam, and the brave but jaded warrior, Lumia Daival, will have to use all of their wits and all of their skills if they are to survive this betrayal and bring back the plans for this new rebel technology.
Fantastic. The speed with which you busted that out was frankly inspiring.
Thank you. I don't know that it was quite Star Wars crawling tone, but I at least hit the like narration.
It felt right. It felt good. It felt good and it felt right.
Thank you. Okay, so now that you know that that's where we're going, this ruthless spy and this jaded ex-guardian slash Jedi slash Nova, we want to know, how did this spy become so ruthless? Mm-hmm. What is it in his past that put him in that situation? And that's what we'll be exploring with these. So speaking of ruthlessness, let's go to the intelligence. Would you like to read the desires for the intelligence?
Absolutely. We have a chance to turn the tide of war, leverage over Liberation members, the heads of mandate officials, classified mandate intelligence, reduced oversight, absolute obedience, secrecy, willing sacrifices, to bear the heaviest burden so others don't have to.
Any of these immediately jumping out to you?
In line with what we've laid out for the Parliament, the one that jumps out to me is to bear the heaviest burden so others don't have to. If this is like a huge populist movement, if this is people so passionate that they are like, that there is a sort of a rah-rah energy of like, we are going to go change the galaxy. The idea that this intelligence has formed as a we have to do this, like as formed as sort of an emergency, like this is what we're doing to maintain that energy.
Totally.
There's an urgency and almost an unpreparedness to that that's very compelling.
Yeah, and I really like the idea that it's they recognize these people need to be able to be ideologues, they need to be able to be firebrands, they need to be able to look really good, and that's not all the work that has to be done, so we have to take this on. It's not going to grow if they look bad, so that's on us.
Yeah.
And that makes me think that one of the other ones that we should choose is secrecy.
Secrecy feels good.
Like, they really have to operate under the radar even more than they will later because they just can't make the movement look bad.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you.
There's one. So the one, like, I think the two that I want to point to, and I'll ask you which of these feels better for this moment, for this prequel moment, this intelligence, this like very early phase intelligence. Are we going for the heads of Mandate officials, or are we going for Mandate intelligence?
I think it's classified Mandate intelligence, right? Like, they'd love to start, like, guillotining some fash heads, but what they're trying to do is prepare so that when they have the forces, they are able to make use of it.
That feels really, really great. That feels really good, and this is. I'm so excited. This is really getting my wheels turning. There's a lot building here that I'm excited to play with.
Me too, and also classified Mandate intelligence was a new one, so I'm just like so happy we're like checking the boxes.
I'm glad we played with them. I'm glad we played with the new toys.
Okay, so we've got our parliament and our intelligence, which means it is time to loop back and do our playbooks. Would you like to read your playbook's short little pitch?
Yes, indeed. Is there... Hold on, is there...
Page 10.
Page 10. The spy is a skilled operator, highly committed but ruthless. Their power comes from their cunning, determination, and willingness to do whatever it takes.
Excellent. I'm going to read the other ones that we don't use, and then finally... the new one that I'll be using, the loyal.
Great.
Other options include, you are the leveraged. The leveraged is a non-believer compelled by circumstance. Their power comes from their outside perspective, their desperation, and their capacity to grow. The leveraged was my attempt to make Jin Urso an interesting character. There's also the Night Errant. The Night Errant once served a cause and now searches for one. Their power comes from their experience, grit, and renewed passion. The Night Errant was inspired by Baze and Chirrut, and for those of you who listened to our last episode, Lumia Daival, my Nova, which is Galactic Jedi, was a Night Errant. Next we have the Convert. The Convert joined the Liberation recently and truly believes it can make a difference. Their power comes from their conscious optimism, energy, and luck. The Convert is inspired by the pilot, Bodhi, who just like comes into it like really thinking he can change things, but doesn't really know how it works. And the Convert actually came from playtesting. It wasn't in the first draft, even of the first edition. It was just realizing there's so many loners and cynics among the spy, the leveraged, and the Night Errant that there needs to be someone who ties them together, who makes them like have feelings for each other and the mission in a positive way. And that's where the Convert came in.
Love it.
But there's now a second character who in some ways also does that, a second playbook who does that. That's our new one for second edition, and who I will be playing, which is the Loyal. The Loyal is a stalwart friend, difficult to win over, but unwavering in their allegiance. Their power comes from their commitment, self-sacrifice, and unshakable care for those they are bonded to. And so this comes from K2 and the way that, for all the complicated reasons it's true in the movie, he is completely loyal to Cassian and will do anything to protect Cassian and to see Cassian's mission through. But he doesn't trust Jin at all. That trust goes on to very specific people. And we see a little bit of the same thing with Baze protecting Chirrut as Chirrut takes on his own mission. And so the Loyal comes from that sort of character. It's also the same relationship we might see from someone like Chewie in other movies. And
Chewie and his Bond Yoda, yeah.
Exactly, precisely. So I'm very excited to test out the Loyal with you. There's also something pretty special about the Loyal. So every character, every playbook in a Belonging Outside Belonging game has 2 to 3 types of moves. In the base, in like the original game, it's you have strong moves and weak moves. In Galactic, you have strong moves, lateral moves, and vulnerable moves. Strong moves are you spending a token to have a really powerful moment that shows your character's strengths. Lateral moves, you give someone a token in order to get them to interact with your playbook in a way that makes narrative sense, and it's often to like do something important for them or have them do something important for you. Vulnerable moves are your character having a weak moment and showing their flaws, their weaknesses, their emotions in a vulnerable way, and then you gain a token. All the books have this. Only the Loyal has what's called a link move. A link move is a subtype. So 2 of Loyal's 4 moves, or 4 strong moves are link moves, and 2 of the 4 vulnerable moves are link moves. Link moves are different depending on if you're doing them to just someone or someone you're bonded to. Because like we said before, the Loyal picks a bond, and in this case, my bond is going to be Torch. The bond is a pillar, and it says, revolutions are built on trust. Relationships forged in struggle are how allies become comrades and rallies become rebellions. The bond is one such relationship or set of relationships. While the liberation is full of people who care deeply for each other, the bond represents the unshakable connection between people who place their lives directly into each other's hand, time and time again, and demonstrates the strength which blossoms from that union. The bond honestly comes from my own organizing experience, as well as like looking at K2 and Cassian, where just like the actual thing that makes it possible to like engage in street anti-fascism is trusting the person next to you because they've put their lives on the line with you over and over. And you know that when shit hits the fan, they're going to be there for you. And the bond is meant to capture it. So it only is added to the game if someone picks the Loyal playbook. And then that person with the Loyal, me, chooses another person, you, and our characters start with the bond playbook. And then it can gain and give tokens doing pillar moves, just like the Parliament and the Intelligence can. And it gives our characters additional strong, lateral, and vulnerable moves, but you can only do them spending tokens on the pillar, not your own tokens. And the Loyal has even more special mechanics, which, like I said, those link moves. When the Loyal, if I want to appear at just the right moment to protect someone, that's one of my strong moves, I can spend a token and protect anyone. But if I do it to protect you, I don't have to give up that token back to the like supply. I put it onto the bond. So it's better, stronger. I get more from it if I'm protecting you. The vulnerable moves are the inverse. So for example, chastise someone more harshly than the situation calls for. If I do that to anyone, I gain a token for like showing that vulnerability. If I do it to you, I have to take that token from the pillar. The pillar loses strength. Our bond loses strength because I do that to you. And if there's nothing on the bond, I can't do it. And it's representative of that existing trust that I like have not gotten to the point in the story where I could break.
That's incredible. I've been looking at this bond I've been looking at the bond and I've just been so excited to play with it. It adds so much to the game that I'm like thrilled to dig into it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to hear that. So if we're going to do that, I have to actually make a Loyal. So we set ahead of time. I just chose some basic, like my name, my look, and my wardrobe styles. And you sort of already have Torch from the last session, but also it's 10 years earlier Torch, so some things will be different. So I think I'm going to go ahead and talk about my character's look, and then we'll go through the backstory questions.
Sounds great.
Awesome. So my character's name is Talara Thorn. She usually goes by Tall. She has a scarred face and intense eyes. Her wardrobe style includes rugged but weathered clothing, a heavy blaster, and a stocky frame. So I'm imagining just this like very large woman, very muscled in her mid-30s, like scars running across her face. Her clothing is all like very practical, very weather beaten. She's clearly been using it for a long time, but it's the sort of stuff that can hold up for a long time. And she looks like the person who not only can step in front of you to take the hit, but has stepped in front of you to take the hit many times. And in Torch's case, probably specifically has done that for Torch.
That's great. I love that so much. And yeah, I am playing Torch Saflam, a spy. His look is, I'm debating if I'm going to change it, but I got to keep his face because face of a friend feels right. I am going to change his eyes. He has nervous eyes. I think that this is a younger Torch, still kind of has the same ruthless heart, but has a distinctly like less certain energy. I think that this is a Torch that has not been put through that ringer that the intelligence will like over time put him through. I think we're probably even going to see a little bit of that today. And I think that like that he has a certain doubt that he could be the spy that the intelligence needs.
I love that.
So he still has that same frame. He is tall. He is lanky. I have face casted the character as I do with every Star Wars character I play. And I am visualizing, if you like frame wise, face wise, like posture wise, I am visualizing like I'm getting a lot of like Bo Burnham in my head. He has this tall, lanky frame and this slightly like his posture is sort of slanted a little bit, and he has this like jovial kind of face that also kind of hides a little bit of like both like wary menace and pain at different times, and I picture a lot of that in Torch.
I was just about to say the like simultaneously joyous, but also you can tell there's something like both dark and nervous behind it. You picked the perfect face cast.
Yeah, that's the vision that I have in my head. And so like I think that younger, definitely like nervous eyes, and his wardrobe here is as opposed to the future where it is a mandate uniform and a leather jacket. I think here it is an oversized coat. Like it is an oversized coat and a concealable blaster.
Yes.
I think that it is specifically like an oversized coat in the sense that it is like a military like bomber jacket type thing, or the Star Wars equivalent, but it is oversized. It's clearly like pulled off of a rack as opposed to kind of like the more tailored leather jacket that we will see 10 years from now.
I love that. I think for my next question, so now we're moving into like backstory questions, choose 2 qualities you respect and one that doesn't impress you. And this question can either be tailored to the person you already know you want to be bonded to, or it can help you if you're in a game with multiple people, pick who do I want to be bonded to, who resembles the qualities I respect, and the ones I don't care about don't factor in. I am leaning towards the 2 qualities I respect are determination and a sense of justice, and the one quality I don't care about is honesty. The idea
that feels good.
Does that feel like it adequately sets me up to respect Torch?
Yeah, that feels good.
Perfect. Because what I'm envisioning here is sort of the idea that like she doesn't see herself as a leader, but she wants to get stuff done, and she wants to work for someone who wants to get stuff done, who wants to change things. And she understands that work is not always going to involve being honest, including with her. Like, she understands that she is a follower, she is a trooper, and that's okay. Some people need to do that, and that can be her, and she just needs someone that she can trust has the right sense of justice, so that even if they're not telling her the whole picture, she knows their moral compass is going to take them to make the difference she wants to make.
I love that. I really love that a lot.
Cool. So you can do your first backstory question.
Choose one principle you have broken and one you will not break. I am going to keep the same principle I will not break. To allow harm by inaction is to be responsible for that harm yourself. The principle that I've broken, I'm going to change to say, I think I'm going to go with retribution is necessary against anyone who has brought harm. I think this Torch is, as opposed to the Torch that we see 10 years from now, who is of the view that burnt bridges are the name of the game, right? That this is a movement and a war that is fought on burning bridges. This is a Torch that has has not hardened in that way yet. And I
Totally.
think like has maybe like actively, maybe like walked away from like an assignment or like an early assignment, maybe that, yeah, I think that he's walked away from an early assignment that like the objective was accomplished, but there was more harm, frankly, like to put it bluntly, there was more harm that could be dealt and more like objectives that could be achieved. There were maybe, going back to those principles of the intelligence, there were heads of mandate officials that could have been collected.
Yes, totally.
And I think that we're seeing a Torch that is starting to deal with that unease of, is that on my hands? Like, is that on my hands that we prioritize this mission over as much justice as could be dealt?
Yeah, I actually really think that sets us up for a fun hook that we could explore and play, which is the idea that something that you didn't take care of, something you didn't destroy, someone you didn't kill, comes back in the course of our story today.
That feels really compelling.
That is where Torch starts to go, oh, actually, I have to be ruthless.
That feels great. I love that.
Yeah, so you didn't take retribution because you were like, I don't have to here. And it's going to bite you potentially today. And for the listener at home who hasn't heard the previous episode, there's also the dramatic irony of the principle that Torch has broken in the future is loyalty to those who have helped you in the past. So I can't imagine if there's a character who Torch maybe broke his loyalty to, who was close to.
Who can say?
In order to like achieve an objective. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out today.
Maybe.
Cool. So we're flipping back to my next backstory question because we're just weaving back and forth for podcast format. Here, I choose my bond. So I fill out the bond pillar with one other player. That means you and I, this is pretty unique, are going to go to the bond pillar on page 20. Note that given this is a playtest, all of these page numbers are subject to change. And we choose 2 desires for the bond, like any other pillar, but only you and I. Even if there are more players, it's just you and me. The desires available are increased intimacy, shared goals, total honesty, guardianship, sacrifice, ideological unity, mutual understanding, debts forgiven, debts repaid, recognition of the self through the other, and apotheosis.
One of those immediately jumps out to me, and I know the one that I want to pick.
Go ahead.
The one that immediately grabs me, the one that I think is really compelling for what we've set up so far is mutual understanding. Particularly because Torch is a liar, and Tal does not care about honesty. And the idea that our bond is rooted in a mutual understanding in spite of that tells us a lot about who these 2 characters are, in that the idea that like probably over the course of the jobs that we've worked together, we see each other and we recognize, we understand those things about the other person. It's that old, not to jumpstar franchises for a hot second, but it is that Garrick and Bashir quote of like everything is true, especially the lies, right? Like it's that vibe of like we both know who we really are, especially when we are lying and dropping untruths.
Yep, absolutely. It's this sense of like, I don't know what you're doing, but I have learned who you are.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'll trust you.
Yeah.
I love that. That's fantastic.
There's real honor among thieves energy of like, I know that you're lying, but that's part of why I trust you.
Exactly. And I think that's probably connected to shared goals is the one I'm imagining for the other desire. Is like that only works if both of us are here to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And like we have to stay on the same page even as we change or this stops working.
I love that. I really love that.
Cool. So we've got our desires for the bond. There's all of the moves, but those get used in play. So the bond is done. Let's go ahead and do your next question.
Yes, indeed. One thing that I have sacrificed and one thing I am fighting for. If it is all right with you, I think I want to keep them as a separate. I want to keep them as a separate character. I think I am going to change this and make the thing that I am fighting for. Now I'm going back and forth is where I'm at, because the last time I chose that I sacrificed the defector that showed me that people can improve, and I'm debating if this is a thing, if this is the thing that has changed in the 10 years, or if that is already something that has happened to Torch. What do you think is the more compelling option?
Probably some editing here, but what I'm going to run by you is, maybe just for the sake of time, we do that. We just keep it the same.
That sounds good.
Because we have a lot of other stuff to play with. So
yeah, I think that feels good.
Cool.
So yeah, I think I've sacrificed the defector that showed me that people can improve, and I think that probably has happened recently, right? That happened on my last mission.
Oh, in fact, what I'm imagining is the act of doing that is also setting you on this path towards being willing to sacrifice other people, right?
That feels great. That feels really, really good. Maybe, yeah, because like that makes Torch like actively. So here's the crisis that Torch is in, and the thing that I am then fighting for is, it's an opportunity to live a different life at this point.
Yeah.
Fuck. Because like the crisis that Torch is facing is that like his last assignment that Tall was probably also on. So maybe we can even flesh out who this defector is together a little bit.
Totally.
Because like who this defector was, they were sacrificed in our last assignment, something that we were on together. And the harsh, brutal reality is that setting that person up and sacrificing them netted us the success of the mission.
Yeah.
And like we got something out of that, right? Like we got something valuable out of that.
I've got a pitch for you.
Hit me.
So I'm jumping a little ahead in my playbook, but I've got a contact in my playbook, so we're going to do relationships later. That is a cynical or petulant newcomer that I wish my comrades wouldn't trust or rely on as much as they do. And what I'm wondering is, by sacrificed, do we want to read that as saying not like they died, but you captured them and are using them in some way that is putting them in harm's way or will kill them, aka this mission that we do today orients around a defector that we are using as bait or to enter something or for a trade.
That's really excellent, especially so. Yeah, that's really excellent. I have an idea of who I would love to propose that being.
Yes.
Especially because I have a mercenary or connected mandate officer that I can leverage. If we can make those the same character, if this is a friendly and jovial like officer in the process of defecting, like this assignment is them defecting, and this is us like actively leveraging their sort of connections, and they're just a person that everyone likes, and we are actively using that to our advantage.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah, that feels great.
Cool. So, do you want to pick? I know we're skipping around, but I say you can totally skip around if you want to.
Yep.
Mercenary or connected? I think connected makes sense based on what you said.
Connected feels right. I think connected feels right. I think they've got friends left, right, and center. They know someone who knows someone who knows someone.
Cool. And from the loyal, and it says in the rulebook, if you want to pick your relationships to be the same person, that's great. It builds connections between your character. I have cynical or petulant. So petulant is very inspired. That's one of the new traits from Going Rogue, and it's very inspired by Director Krennic. Like, they complain and they narc and they throw fits. Or are they like cynical? Are they like totally in it for themselves and don't think that like any other loyalty is due, and that like all that matters is watching out for yourself? Do you have a sense of which one of those is more interesting to you? I'm leaning petulant, but I know it's not the like friend.
Petulant and connected combines gives me cocktail in their hand all like socialite diplomat, and that
Totally.
is so much fun to play with. I get like that extremely like I get Arrested Development vibes. I get we've roped a Bluth into this vibes, and like that feels like such a fun person to both set up and have them unexpectedly like reveal something to us. That sets up both comedy and tragedy in a really fun way.
How is Vero Obrit for their name?
Vero Obrit is a spectacular name.
Great. Okay. Cool. That is our character. Vero Obrit, and he's a diplomat. Let's see. We'll call him Director because I've decided that the mandate uses Director for diplomats.
That feels great.
And connected and petulant. And for those who don't know, these words give them 3 NPC moves and they're called traits, and they give them moves that they can use, and they get attached to a pillar. And I think Director Vito Obrit is definitely attached to the mandate.
That feels good. That feels great.
Cool. So that was your backstory question. It just also led us naturally into that. And I've attached Vito Obrit to the mandate on our play doc. So it is time for my backstory question, which is, how did your bond earn your trust? I haven't actually figured this one out yet, because I have saved you from imminent death, told you hard truths you needed to hear, showed you the error of your ways, gave you something to believe in, sheltered you when you needed it most, spared you when they could have killed you, or reprogrammed you. I don't think it's truths, because that's not what we do. I don't think it is sparing me, because I think I have always sort of been on the same side. I'm leaning towards sheltered when I need it most, gave you something to believe in, or saved me from imminent death. Do any of those 3 make the most sense to you? I could also show you the error of your ways if I was like a criminal and using my powers like not for good, and I was getting disillusioned and you were like, this is what you need to be doing.
That's really great because it adds like it adds a little bit of like it hits those perfect notes of like heroism and also menace. I think that's great because it gives that really like strong note of both like heroism and menace. If it is, if it is like you are a criminal, right? You, like you said, you are a criminal. You are.
I have a great idea.
Losing that drive, and I was like, there's something you can fight for.
I think it actually is a little like a bit of spared you when they could have killed you. What it is you were on a mission and I was like hired out to be on the other side. I'm the member of like a crime syndicate, something like the Huts, essentially. And you could tell I didn't want to shoot. Like I was supposed to stop you in some way and I didn't, because you could tell my heart wasn't in it. And I was using my skills as a like talented, like strong, capable fighter for in a way that like that made me feel empty. And you were like, instead of shooting me, you were like, you didn't fire, you don't want to do this. Come with me, let's make a difference.
I love that. I almost want to, and I want to almost propose something. If we're fully playing in some idle dreaming space here, I think that like sometime like there's a moment of like you didn't shoot me, and like there's a moment of like we have this moment, and what ends up happening is like I track you down later to be like, I am presenting you with an offer.
Yes, absolutely.
Like I know, like in the moment it was just like, I know you don't want to do this. Like I know your heart's not in it. And then later we get a cantina scene, because every Star Wars knockoff has got to have a cantina scene where Torch approaches you like, look, you don't have to be here for this. You don't have to be involved in what you're doing. You could go be a hero. And I think that he says that with a sense of like, it's right. He's right on that line of if he believes if heroes exist or not, or if he's saying that because he knows it's what she wants to hear.
And like, this is an example of when the mercy that Torch no longer has in our previous game, that's when it paid off. That's an example of the power of that mercy. But this session will also show us the example of the shortcomings of it. And I love that contrast.
Yep, that's great. That's very, very good.
Awesome. Okay. So relationships left and right, and then we get into play. Questions left and right. Cool. I've already done one relationship. I'm going to do one more. Though if you have ideas for you have two relationships. The spy gets one extra, and my excuse is that it's because spies are connected, and my real reason is I love Cassian Andor, and this game happened because of him, and it's my favorite.
I understand.
So
Understandable.
But yeah, let's see.
I'm looking at these. And the first one that pops into my head, especially for a young Torch, I think having a friendly mechanic who services my ship and weapons on the sly. If this is a young Torch that hasn't started burning bridges yet, that idea that he just has a lot of friends and he has friends that do him services and help him out with stuff. I think he maybe relies a little bit more on his personal network than maybe the artificial networks that he will come to construct as a hardened spy in the future.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I am going to go with the vengeful figure with a vendetta against me. So vengeful is one of the new traits from going rogue, and I think specifically this is my former crime boss.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What is her name? Sierra Silent. Sierra Silent is the vengeful crime boss with a vendetta against me. And she is attached to the scum and villainy pillar. I'm guessing yours is connected to the liberation pillar?
Yeah, that feels right. That feels right.
Awesome. And I imagine there's a chance she could come up today. Cool. And you have one more relationship?
I do, and I'm thinking of pulling from what we had last time. Pulling from what I came up with last time, which is my scheming superior officer.
Yes.
I really like that idea. I like that, the idea of a superior officer, of a scheming superior officer, as one of the calcifying presences of our story. The idea that that authority figure is the one that shapes Torch and shapes the intelligence feels really, really nice.
That sounds great. So Tylo Grenzik, I remember is the name. Scheming. I don't remember what Tylo's pronouns were. Do you want to use they, them?
They, them. Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool. Awesome. So we've got all our relationships.
All right.
And finally, ask left and ask right. So, I'm going to ask one of my questions first, which is, do you feel you deserve my complete faith in you?
If you asked me 10 years from now, my answer would be yes. Even if I knew I was going to betray you, my answer would be yes. Now, 10 years earlier, my answer is no. I think that it's that doubt in that sense of self, right? For better or for much, much worse, it's that doubt in that sense of I have to believe in, I don't yet believe that I am acting in complete confidence, even if I am acting harmfully, and that is not necessarily a good thing. I mean, arguably, I'd say I'm a better person right now, but in this moment, I doubt that you should trust me fully because I may hurt you.
Yes, absolutely. Also, playtest note, I'm changing it to, do you feel you deserve my complete faith in you? Why? Because these questions should never be yes or no questions. You're a great role player. You answered it anyway. But trying to make sure someone focuses on that why that you answered is a thing that should be in here. So I've noticed
that feels good.
In play.
Yeah, that feels really good. That makes a lot of sense. I innately just jumped into the why, but I think having that on the page is the right call.
Yeah, awesome. Ask left and right. I'm using these words. These are questions that you usually ask around the table to connect you to other characters, but there's only one other player, so to my left and to my right is Jeff. So do you want to ask me a question?
I do. I wasn't originally going to ask this question, but with the relationship that we've built, I think there's a really nice opportunity to flesh that out and give us a little bit of a scene of like what our bond looks like. What's a lie that you've caught me in, and how did it make you feel?
Absolutely. And it needs to be a lie that this early version of Torch is capable of. And I think the only way that happens is you've been told to lie.
Mm.
And so it needs to be before I, like later Torch would lie to me, but this Torch is doing it because he's told to. And it's probably early before I have the same like information access or trust that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I imagine Tylo has sent you to recruit me, and you were told that like, if you recruit me, I will be safe from retribution by members of my criminal outfit, like the criminal syndicate, that like I have the Liberation's protection, that in fact they'll like buy me off. And that's just not true. But I don't learn this until the first time they send a hit after me. And by that time, I've been working with you for a while, and I have seen Tylo, and I have come to understand. I've watched you turn assets, and I go, that's what you had to do. Like, I don't say that to you. In fact, I don't think I talked to you about it. But like my internal understanding of what happened is, yeah, that is what you needed to do to turn me. Well, I hope you keep me safe. These are all internal, but I think you do, at least at this point. You probably. I imagine. I think Torch probably even like dispatches that hit person, right? Like that's what I was thinking.
That's like definitely Torch just murks them without mercy or without questions, and it's like it adds that detail of like the intelligence the intelligence, the Parliament is not going to offer you any protection, but like Torch is, both because he cares about you and because you are valuable to him.
Yes, absolutely. And telling the difference between that is always very tough.
Yeah.
For both of us. My next question is, what is one time that I saved your life?
One time you saved my life is, I think it was our first mission together. We were sent to recover like a data disk. We were sent to recover files on the mandate that would allow us to like get a real early tactical advantage, right? Like maybe some political dirt that would really like galvanize these firebrand politicians. And in doing so, like I think Torch, being a young spy, decides to launch an entire like sting operation or like a scheme and like a grift and do a whole thing. And part of what Tal does to save my life is like I think there's a moment where like we gotta just shoot our way out of it.
Yep. Like you're still trying to talk. You are like actively talking, and I pull you back, step in front of you, and start blasting.
Yeah, and like it clears the table, I think. I think there's like a notable element of like clearing the table because like I've become caught in my own series of like spinning lies, and like because I was in my head like I gotta have cover stories and I gotta be doing this and this because this is what spies do. And I think that you saved my life, and the thing that I the way that that's changed me is I have realized I've realized that there is an efficiency, right? I think that maybe the next mission that we go on, the next episode of this limited series, we see that play out differently, right? We see a sense of like brutal efficiency of like we have one lie, we have one plan, and if that doesn't go right, then bodies start hitting the floor.
Yep. And I demonstrated that for you.
Yeah.
And save your life in the process.
Yep.
Okay, your last question, then we hop into play.
I'm gonna go the opposite side of that and say, no, I'm not gonna. I was gonna go with my actions put you at risk, but I want to go with how have my unique connections and information been invaluable to you recently?
I think I have asked you to leverage your connections to extricate me from that criminal syndicate.
Mm.
Like, I know it's not what we're supposed to do, but I can't have that target on my back, and it's like the one thing I've asked of you.
I really, really like that. That's fantastic.
Cool. And I think that could also come back to bite us in interesting ways. That feels like it sets us up with all of the tools that we need to hop into this.
Yeah, I have a very clear picture in my head of where I want us to drop in.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am going to pick up, I think, the intelligence playbook at this moment. Because I'm thinking in terms of Tylo, and I'm thinking in terms of, like, the assignment, right?
Yes.
And I think that, even if I'm not explicitly making a move, I think this comes from Tylo. We are using Director Vero and his connections. There is a fancy party, right? Because Vero is going to be seen nowhere before he's seen at a fancy party.
Yeah.
And we are using him to get us into that party where we are going to find a piece of secret information.
Totally.
And that is going to be like the thing that we are going to leverage.
Yeah. So I think, if you want, we can start sort of, en media res.
Yeah.
And just like be at this party. We can either be like greeting him, but I actually am really interested, especially with time constraints, in just starting that like we have already taken Vero aside. And
yeah, because I think like what's cool about that is like we get a flash of us like recruiting him. And I think that part of it is that like we might already have relationships with him, right? Like,
yes,
it's we get flashes of like the meetings that have been had with Vero, and like we already kind of know him as our guy on the inside.
And if you're all right with it, I would love to lean on the idea that like it's not a friendly sort of thing. It's not like a I guess we did say defector. I just sort of like the idea that we are, because he has this like petulant air, right? That we are in some way threatening him into this. Maybe he's even defecting because he thinks it is like safer for him. Like we've convinced him that the mandate is out to get him, and his only safe thing to do is join with the liberation.
Can I twist this knife even further?
Go ahead.
The game text says he is a defector.
Yes.
We don't necessarily know that he has like made the decision to defect.
Absolutely.
We have this is a case where I think that we see that same lesson play out from Torch, where it's, you know, this is that moment where he is maybe showing that people can change, but he's showing it too late.
Yeah.
Like we have created in our heads the idea that he is an asset that has to be manipulated. But what we have not pieced together, and sort of the dramatic irony and tragedy of that, is he was coming around. Like he was naturally going to reach up, for as petulant and childish as he is, he was going to come around, and eventually had we he was going to help us out, and we have not pieced that together.
Yes, that's perfect. And I have an opening shot, if that's okay with you.
Give it.
So like the very first thing we see on screen is like him being thrown back against a wall. Like he's in his like full fancy dress party uniform, but he's thrown back against a metal wall and like stumbling on the floor, looking up kind of scared. And he's like, Okay, geez, I got it. Yes, I'll get you into the archives in the basement. That was already the plan. You don't have to. And he like puts his hands up over his head. That is complain and gain a token, and the mandate gains a token.
That's really very good.
And then reverse shot onto the two of us. And do you want to talk?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we come back to Torch, and we come back to him. I think Tall is holding Vero to the wall. I think that feels right. That feels like the right person to be doing the hard intimidation. And I think Oh, fuck. There's an immediate... I'm gaining a token.
Yes.
Excuse me. I'm gaining a token because there's an immediate moment that I want to see Tall's reaction to. I am going to lie to a comrade about my capabilities or intentions.
Totally.
I think that we see Torch in his oversized coat, like stand behind and just kind of mutter like, look, you help us out. The Liberation will protect you. The Parliament will ensure that you are given what you need to survive. We have your back. How does Tal react when you hear the literal exact same lie?
I think she like shakes him by the collar a little bit and goes, trust him. It's a lot better than the alternative.
And I think that in response to that, Vero, let me look at his traits for just a moment. I think that he does go along with it.
Oh, I haven't put the connected moves in yet. 1 second. Because actually those could be useful here if this could also be edited out. Cool. Those are now here. Point someone towards who or what they're looking for and give them a token.
Yeah, that feels good. I think that he kind of gives like a quiet nod, right? Like this is the first time we've heard him shut up and we put him down and he gives a nod. And we get because Star Wars is nothing if not a game of stealing things from other pop culture places.
Yep.
We get a jazzy Ocean's 11 style montage.
Uh-huh.
And like we pan over and there is like a mandate minister. His name is Darkovian. Let's go Dark. You know what? I said Darkovian. We're gonna go Darkovian. His name is Darkovian.
Darkovian. I love it.
Darkovian is a minister. Is like the he is the minister of he is the mandate minister of archival research.
Yep.
He is a large and like, you know, connected, powerful person who has access to these lower level archives. And he's like, that's the person that we need to get in with. Luckily, you know, he and I have a long standing, hold on. I have to pull something up real quick because this is important to me. And that is, that I came up with a name for this specific term and I have to find what it is.
Go ahead.
Because I wrote a playbook that is for a network of spies. And in it, one of the things that I came up with, because I realized when I was writing the network, was like that you could also use it to make the Fast and the Furious gang. So I have to find, there it is. We have a long-standing dart racer betting league that he and I are both in, and so like it should be easy to rope him into a conversation. And I believe that like once we have him in a conversation, we should be able to get those access codes from him, you know, either through manipulation or whatever it is that the two of you do.
Awesome. I've given him the trait from the Going Rogue book, Trusting, which has like ignore a warning sign and gain a token, or follow someone into a risky situation and give them a token.
That's great.
Also, you now have 2 tokens because you used point someone towards who or what they're looking for and give them a token from Vero's connected trait. So all 2 right. Tokens for Torch.
2 tokens for Torch.
Okay. So he points us in the direction of that guy. And yeah, I imagine we get like smash cut to a casino sort of deal. And we see everything around. And the 2 of us are like looking out from across the thing at Darkovian. And we still have Vero there, who's looking very nervous and is standing right in front of Tal, who definitely has a blaster in his back. But they're standing close enough not to be able to see that. And I think Tal says, I don't like how out in the open we are.
And I think, I think you say that I think you say that, and I am spending a token. No, yeah, I'm spending a token. I'm spending one of Torch's tokens on a strong move, which is reveal that a tool you need is already on hand concealed. And I think that you say that, and then you glance, and Torch is this is a big moment for the show. We see Torch in the Mandate uniform that he will wear in the follow-up series, and he's like, I don't know what you mean. We're exactly where we belong. We are just two people on the job.
I think she like looks at you and looks back to Vero like suspiciously and says, "You're the boss." And I think Vero from there is like, "Can we just go talk to him before she shoots me?"
Yes, I believe that is exactly the plan.
Cool. I've got a good idea for what I'm going to do once we start that conversation. So let's assume we go over to.
Yeah, I think that we get a swirling of an outer space roulette table, and then like the camera does like a swoop pan or does a swoop cut, and then we are at the next scene. Like we are at the table. It is Vero, it is Torch, it is Tall, and it is Darkovian.
Cool. Can you introduce yourself to Darkovian? And then
yes.
I'll take him.
I think Torch. I think words. Brain reset. Vero sits down and like leans forward and like points at. We see like a hologram of a dart racer race going on, and like points and goes, that racer's jet engine is about to explode. I hope that that's not who you bet on. And Darkovian, Vero says that to Darkovian, and Darkovian bristles immediately, like, "What? That's not. That is not at all. You have once again wandered halfway into a race, and kaboom." See, this is why I don't bet without you, Vero. You have an eye for these things. You have an incredible understanding of the wheels that make the dart races work. And frankly, I may not always like that we end up on different sides of the bets, but it is certainly something that I do respect.
Thank you, Director Obrit. I've always appreciated your confidence. He seems pretty sarcastic on the last word. Mm-hmm. He looks Obrit over and then looks at the other two. I don't recognize your friends. Who have you brought here today?
This is and he pauses for a moment. And I think he pauses for a moment, and I want to put us in some trouble, because that feels like a good moment to put us in some trouble, is like that we just did not think to give ourselves fake names.
Absolutely. And we sort of assumed he'd be able to keep up, and he can't.
Yeah.
I think we see like he's like struggling like for a while, like 5 or 10 seconds, or like 5 seconds before Torch stands up, like says something. And in that time, two of the Darkovian's guards step up and start drawing their blasters from behind the three of them. Which is going to be put a bonded character in immediate danger and gain a token. And the bond gains 1 token. And as those blasters get drawn, Tall does not wait. She pulls her blaster, and as she does so, they knock it out of her hand. And then they start beating up on her, ignoring Torch. As if like, we've rooted out the spy. So suddenly there's a brawl between the 2 guards and Tall. I am using the vulnerable move for the loyal, which is get involuntarily separated from a bonded character. And Tall is immediately being dragged off, not saying anything. And Darkovian looks at Vero and then looks at you and says, "Why have you brought trouble to my betting table?"
Oh yeah, I'm spending a token. I am absolutely spending a token to make a strong move here. And I think the strong move that I am making is I think that unsheaths his own blaster. I think Torch unsheaths his blaster, sets it to the neck of Vero, and throws a grin and moves you and your comrades around an obstacle that you would be unable to overcome directly. And I think the obstacle here is Darkovian himself, right? I think that the way that he overcomes it is by smiling, and he goes, Come on now, Minister. I'm certain that by now you've recognized that this mandate costume is a high-quality forgery. Certainly you would recognize, you, as someone experienced in spotting undercover mandate investigations officers, would recognize a double bluff to spot a person that was a little too willing to make friends, and kind of gives that distinct smile that I think that we recognize from 10 years from now as I am presenting this as Vero. I am presenting this fully as Vero brought someone unintentionally to get Darkovian off of Torch's back so that the heat goes onto Vero, and then Torch can dispatch with these guards.
Okay, so the idea that, you are mandate intelligence trying to, root out a leak, and so you were trying to show that Vero was untrustworthy?
Yeah.
I love that, absolutely. And
that is a big prominent sacrificing of a defector that was good, that was going to change.
Yeah, and I think Darkovian Ohm, trusting, ignores a warning sign and gains a token. He looks at Vero, looks at you, and goes, Well, I've never really cared for him anyway. Guards, take him with the other one. And two more guards step up, and Vero starts yelling, Vero has an explosive outburst at someone and gives them a token, but I guess that's just back to himself. Oh no, has it at you, so you gain another token. And he's yelling as he's being dragged off, You liar! You liar! You said we were on the same side! You said that we would work together! You said... And then they, clock him, leaving you standing alone with Darkovian Ohm and his trust. And don't worry, I will bring Tal back into this. There's plenty of ways to reunite the bond. I just think this is a really good scene of the two of you across from each other. That is a
great scene of the two. I think so. If I could, I'd love to spend a token from the pillar.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a moment of I think that the message that we communicate that no one listening understands, there is a genuine moment where Torch does what to all appearances looks like just a weird little gesture in the way that you would expect a quirky detective. He makes a Columbo on the fly is the best way to put it. He does a little spin in his stool of wonderful, and kind of twirls his blaster as he puts it away, spins on the stool, and there is a hot second. There's a moment, there's a glance where Tal and Torch lock eyes, and they both we lock eyes, and we have a moment where we both non-verbally check in with each other of you good? You got this?
Absolutely. And I think Tal just spits on the ground, and that is her communicating to you, I'll be fine. That is her signal for I'll be fine. We get a spit on the ground, and then a punch immediately, and it's yeah, she'll be fine. Exactly. So we've now got the two knocked out ones being dragged away, you across the table from Vero, with his trust.
With Darkovian.
Oh, sorry, yes, with Darkovian, with his trust. And for viewers at home, that was the strong move from the bond pillar. Communicate a secret message to another bonded character, which no one else listening understands. And if you're down for it, I would love to open up to the two of them in a cell. So
that's great.
She gets punched, and it knocks her out, and the scene ends with the knockout. And then we wake up the two of them across from each other.
Yeah, that's great.
I think the two of them are sitting in that cell. I'm going to check my moves really quick. Yeah, cool.
I would like to put a token immediately onto the bond.
Yep.
Because I want to make a vulnerable move.
Yeah.
And lash out. Yeah, I want to lash out. I think that when you come to Torch, the first thing he says on the other side of the cell is like, I thought you said you had it.
I love that, absolutely. And I think Tal looks back up and like Vero is still knocked out next to her, and she goes, "Oh, what is it? Give me a second. We've been working together long enough that you should know a cell like this doesn't hold me for long. Why aren't you back with the mark?"
And I think that let me look at my moves here, because I think this is a moment to make like a vulnerable move on my part.
Totally.
Because part of it is that I initially misunderstood who the second person in the cell was, but I think there's an incredibly juicy opportunity.
Oh, I also have another offer, because I was imagining the other person in the cell was Vero, and I was actually going to have a me and Vero scene where we
that's
sort of
great.
And then
let's completely rewind and have the two of you in the cell while Torch. I think that we see Torch, like, we just get like brief shots of Torch like charming Darkovian.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I imagine we could even have what we just suggested happen at the end of this scene. So like you approach the cell after this.
Yeah.
Cool. So we knocked out, open up, me waking up before Vero, and I think I just like put my boot on Vero's shoulder and like shove him against the wall to try and wake him up.
And I think that he comes to, I'm putting a token on him because he comes to complaining. He just comes to like, ow, God, my eye and my shoulder. I have a bad shoulder. I thought that was very well communicated. I don't know why we have a dedicated cell block for directors.
After he talks for that long, she grabs him by the collar again, yanks him forward so that like his head bounces back against his back, and goes, "It's your fault that we're in here in the first place. Do you really want to test my patience and blame me? You said that he could be trusted."
And he sits for a moment, and I am gonna complicate someone's vision of freedom, which is a move from the liberation.
Cool.
Or actually, let me alternately look elsewhere.
I do have an idea for kind of where I want to take this conversation if he's just like blubbering, but you're welcome to.
I think this is a good opportunity to reveal a twist, and I think that what that twist is going to look like. Oh, I know exactly what it is. I'm going to offer help and solidarity and ask you to complete a task.
Absolutely.
And if you accept, give you a token. This is a move from the intelligence playbook.
Yeah.
And what it is he says, "Yeah, I thought we were all on the same team. I was told, Grenzik told me that if I cooperated, I would have a position, I would have a chair. I thought that was all conveyed. I thought that this was all, I thought that, did you hear that I was, why are you treating me like this?"
Listen, and I'm going to use the bond move, vent to a character not sharing this bond about another bonded character without talking to them first. And the bond will gain a token. And so she goes, "Listen, when you work with Torch, you can trust that he's going to get the job done. Your safety is not if your safety is not part of the job, then it doesn't matter. And if you want to last as long as I have, you better get with that program. Because if you're in the way, and she like moves some of her clothing aside and shows a scar, let's just say I've learned to put myself in the way. Because it feels better that way, at least.
At that moment,
tosses go ahead.
At that moment, I'm spending a token to like cut over. In like I said, we were seeing these montage shots. I think that we see Torch like pull off the rest of the job, right? Like I think that we get like a montage shot of him and Darkovian like walking and chatting. And like they've got glasses in their hands, and like they walk through the halls. We see to like I am revealing a crucial piece of I'm revealing a tool you need is already on hand concealed. I think that like we like because he's already trusting, and I have that trust. We see him walk by. We see him implant a little like USB drive or like the Star Wars equivalent into a like a computer, and like effortlessly kind of walk off. And the last thing that we see before we segue over to him entering onto this scene is he turns a corner and we get a close-up shot of his face. And it does not look happy.
Absolutely.
And then we cut back.
I like getting that moment of just like him, unhappy at the situation. Sorry, I'm scatterbrained, if that could be edited out.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Cool. Brains. Yeah, I love the idea of just like, he knows that this is how to succeed, but he's still only just learning how to like tolerate that.
And I think, we pan back over and, finish up what you're saying to Vero. I think that he does kind of say like, yeah, look, you just need to get me out of here. Like, I'm happy to do what you need. You just got to get me out of here.
And she steps up, goes over to the door, and like reaches and pulls out a concealed blaster. And because this is Star Wars, she just shoots a door panel and it goes loose. And she's like, you're not, you were a means to an end, Vero. And, well, Torch is already at the end. And she shuts the door behind her. And then, like, yanks it to, like, stick it in place. Discover a threat to someone who does not share your bond. And choose not to protect them and gain a token. Does Vero have a reaction to that?
I think that like if the door did you say you're shooting the door open or locking it shut?
Once I get out, like I slip out immediately, and then I like ram it shut and like really stick it into the wall in some way, maybe like shoot at the wall to like melt it a little bit. So basically I relock it behind me manually.
I am going to put someone in immediate danger and give them a token off of the mandate pillar. Because he's got one token left. And I think what it is he, I think that he starts swearing vengeance. And I think that it is very specifically like screaming into his communicator that like he has been set up. There is a spy breaking loose, and you hear the breakout. And I have another very big moment. that I want to drop in to really like throw this bond, I think, into it. Like if we're seeing this, I think there's a moment that I gotta throw this bond into disarray.
Yeah.
Cause I think what it is I am going to put a token onto the pillar bond by putting a bonded character immediately in danger. And I think like you walk out into a hallway, some elevator doors opened, and Torch steps off of it. He sees you down here. And his face is rock hard, and he's like, I thought that you had this. I thought that you were in control of the situation. Why are you still here? Why have you not made your entire way off of the station?
She like looks for the first time, looks genuinely disturbed. And she's like, I wasn't going to leave until I had you, Torch.
I thought you were gone. I thought you were already gone and that this wasn't going to be an issue. Okay, we need to go. We need to go now. And as he's saying that, the doors open, and this is what puts you in danger. What is the name of the crime boss that you pissed off?
Oh, what is the name? Did I put that in there? Let me check Scum and Villainy. Sierra Silent.
Sierra Silent steps off of that elevator with Darkovian Alm, and we see that is the face, that is the reaction face that he made. Like we get the flashback to that, and we see him make that face.
Oh,
and it's
Sierra.
Because Darkovian goes, this is my friend. Hello. Allow me to introduce the investigator that helped us root a mandate leak today. And he is like, and then we see at that moment, we hear on the comms, like, this, like, there is an escaped person, blah, 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 blah. And, Sierra, like, stits up, like, you have someone in your holding cells. A runaway spy, you say. I think I'd like to meet them.
Can I make another suggestion? Because I
Please.
really like.
Yes, please.
Yeah, totally. I like that because like I am outside of the cell now, and like the elevator opens and the two of them see me. And I love the idea that like you've said all these things to me, and they've just communicated to her that there's this runaway spy, and then she sees me.
Oh, that's even better. If they were just coming down here for business and then they hear on the communicator that someone has escaped, she sees you and like the everything clicks.
Yes, and pistols go out. Like she draws, and I'm between the two of you, and I'm going to use my move from the loyal, which is draw fire and take a hit, but shrug it off. I grab your shoulder, throw you behind me, trusting that you've already gotten the data. We said, like, we saw you accessing a system, and I just throw myself forward, putting my shoulder forward, and take the blaster bolt into my shoulder, yelling to you, "Get out!" And I'm still barreling towards the elevator, even with my shoulder down. What do you do?
I am going... Fuck. Jess, there's a really good vulnerable move here that I think like is a really good closing beat here that hurts like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
The mission is bigger than any of us. Yeah. I think that he like pauses and he reaches for that concealed blaster, and like he does just in time for one of the guards to like take aim at him, and he realizes that it's next to that data stick, right? Like he's got the blaster and he's got his data stick. He reaches for it and he aims it, and he mutters to himself, "The mission is bigger than any of us." And like he shoots over one of their shoulders to cause a distraction, hoping that it'll give you the time to escape or do something, but he doesn't look back. He just shoots, he takes the shot, and like he takes the shot and he just runs. He just books it. And I think and I think I'm going to take another token as he's running. Because I think at that moment, as he's running by, right? We've seen you walk some hallways. He's running by. I think that two guards have wedged out the door, and Vero is like stumbling out of it. And having heard that on the communicator, in just a bout of fury, just pulls the gun and just puts one in his chest.
Wait, you're saying like Torch as he's passing Vero?
He passes the hallway and just puts one in Vero's chest, like, you motherfucker, you ruined you put us in this spot. You maybe killed my best friend. You're not walking out of here.
Yes.
And he never got that information that he was genuinely like an asset that was going to defect.
Can I put something in the middle of these and have that be the closing beat?
Yes, please.
Cool. So you like make that distracting shot and book it, but the camera doesn't follow you. It stays on Tall. And like Tall like barrels into the elevator and like immediately starts grappling with Syrah. Like the two of them like knock their pistols out of each other's hands and they're grappling. But meanwhile, Darkovian is talking into his communicator. And as they're fighting, Syrah like looks at Darkovian and says, this one, and like I punch Syrah and she gets interrupted, but then she continues, she's with the tall skinny one. Because she knows that you recruited me. And so suddenly Darkovian knows, and he reaches for his communicator to like tell the security that you are also a problem. And in that moment, I see that. Tall sees that. Tall sees Syrah going for the blaster. We see both hands, one for a communicator and one for the blaster. And Tall could reach for either. And I'm going to spend my final token to use the move, appear at just the right moment to protect someone. And because I'm using it on the bond, the token moves to the bond instead of being spent. And I let Syrah grab the blaster, and I reach over and smash the communicator into his head, knocking him out. And Syrah shoots me in the back, and I drop.
And so we see that. We see you drop, and then we see Vero drop, and we see like alone on a turbo lift is just Torch sitting in that Mandate uniform that we would see him in 10 years from now.
To literally borrow from the visual language of Rogue One, you know how Rogue One ends with them passing the plans through on Leia's ship and like the opening of A New Hope? We see you coming up on a turbo lift in that uniform, and I imagine our previous episode opens with the exact same composition shot of you in that uniform.
Yep. And I think that we get this really brutal sequence, right? Like this closing sequence where Torch is sitting and like the blaster's on the floor, and like we see him process all of this, and he has this little like visual breakdown, and we see him go from like processing the emotions and grieving his friend and the anger that he had to kill someone, and like processing all of this, and as the turbo lift goes up, we see him like kind of go blank-faced and climb to his feet and adjust his uniform, tweak the collar, make sure that the shoulders are right, so that like when we see that opening shot from our last episode of him stepping off of an elevator, he is perfectly prim and polished in his uniform, in his imposter's uniform.
Yep. And his theme that has been playing this whole episode shifts into minor key, and it's the one we heard in the other episode.
Yep. Gorgeous. What an ending. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That ruled.
Oh, that was so much fun.
That was amazing. Oh, I'm so happy. That was incredible.
I love playing games with you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. This is so much fun. I really appreciate it. So, real quick, before we wrap up, where can people find you, your work, and Going Rogue online?
Yeah, I'll tell you that in just a second. Would you mind if I said a little bit of just like playtesting things that I noticed?
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. So I already talked about like adding that why. The biggest thing I noticed, because I was playing the new playbook, is that I had so little moves to do early on. Like once we were in the thick of it, I had so much that I could do vulnerable move-wise to gain a token, but there was so little I could do before we were in trouble. And like I could have introduced that trouble, but I didn't want to yet. And so I'm definitely going to go back to the drawing board and like either add more or replace a vulnerable move or two, so that the like loyal isn't reliant upon already being in trouble or in the middle of a plan before they can gain tokens.
That feels good. That feels really good. Yeah, I think that feels really good, and I think that feels like it'll be good, and it feels like it would be a nice way to, like, it feels like it would be a really good opportunity for a vulnerable move that, like, kind of sets up those tests, right? Like, gives those opportunities, like, I'm thinking about the fact that the mandate has, like, foreshadow a threat and then immediate danger. And I think there's a really nice opportunity to kind of, like, have an early game vulnerable move that, like, sets up that things are going to go wrong.
That makes so much sense, and it can, like, tie into the ways that the bond usually goes wrong. That's perfect. Yeah. How did you feel about the pillar moves on the bond, or the bond moves in general? Is there any that you...
I really loved the bond. I loved the bond moves. I think the one area that I was maybe... I think the one area that I was maybe struggling with...
Yeah.
...is I would have liked a vulnerable character move along those same lines. Like, I think either the playbook, the bonded, either the loyal or the bond needs that, like, early game vulnerable move, because, like, there was, like, it was tough to put a token onto the bond to use the pillar moves, and I think it was a little bit of a struggle to be like, hey, I want to make a vulnerable move early on to put the tension onto that character so that we can unlock those lateral and strong moves.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. I have the put a bonded character in immediate danger and gain a token, and it sounds like maybe I should move that to something more like the mandate's foreshadow a threat, and that might really...
that might be good. That might be really good.
Perfect. Cool. It's really nice to get to do this, both to get to show some playtesting, and it's also very funny because I noticed when I was listening to the Galactic episode that it's actually an early playtesting version of Galactic as well. Like, some of the things that are mentioned aren't in the released version of 2E, so in a long-standing tradition of showing some ongoing versions of this game.
And I enjoy it and I appreciate it.
Cool. Now would you like me to answer your question?
Yes, please. Let us know where we can find the game and where people can find you and your work online.
Absolutely. So you can find all of my work on jessfrom.online. That's my website. I write science fiction. I've been in a couple magazines. I make music. I write games. I do a variety of things. You can find all of that and more on jessfrom.online. You can find my games specifically on jessfromonline.itch.io, which includes Going Rogue 2E, and includes I Have the High Ground, which is my crowdfunded game from this year, which is a 2-player dueling game of banter, posturing, and capes. You can also hear Jeff and I play that on Party of One, and it's one of my favorite actual plays I've ever recorded. So that's there too. If you're interested in hiring me for freelancing, I do both writing and editing. I'm doing some TTRPG writing right now, so you can also inquire about that on jessfrom.online. And finally, if you are listening to this on release day or release week, Going Rogue 2E just came out, and there is a bundle that gets you Going Rogue and the base game, Galactic 2E by Riley Rethel, all for in one bundle and at a significant discount. And so you can find that by going to my itch or by going to jessfrom.online/rogue bundle. And of course, that'll be in the show notes. So check out Going Rogue, check out the bundle, check out I Have the High Ground, and you can find all of that and more.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This game was just the absolute fucking best. It was everything that I wanted it to be. I am so thrilled with it. But for now, I'm going to throw it over to me in the future so that he can wrap up with the show. Take a future me.
Thanks, past me. And thanks again to Jess for coming onto the show. Jess, that game was... I know that I've said this. I know that I said this in the intro. I know that I say this on the itch.io page. Like, I've said this a lot. But this game is so fucking cool, and I love it so much, and I had such an absolutely great time playing it that I just want to scream about how cool this game is. The story that we told is amazing, and I love this sort of dark, compromised prequel that we've made. I want to live in the world of these characters for as long as possible, because it's so freaking good. Whew. And with that said, be sure to pick up your own copy of Going Rogue 2nd Edition at jessfromonline.itch.io, and be sure to follow Jess on Twitter at jessfromonline. Then while you're on Twitter, follow us at Party of One Pod, like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/partyofonepodcast, join our Discord community to talk to us about the show at bit.ly/partyofonediscord, And if you enjoyed the show, consider backing us on Patreon or Ko-fi at patreon.com/JeffStormer or Ko-fi.com/JeffStormer to get bonus content such as ad-free episodes, such as early access, raw audio of episodes, bonus content such as the long-lingering single-player actual play that I've been threatening to make for 5 years, Party of None. You can find all of that and more at patreon.com/JeffStormer or Ko-fi.com/JeffStormer. You can also head to bit.ly/partyofone merch and pick up a Party of One t-shirt, sticker, notebook. They have a bunch of stuff there. All of it's got the Party of One logo and some fun designs, such as the Take It Past Me, Thanks Future Me t-shirt designed by friend of the show, Caro Assertion. That you can find at bit.ly/partyofone merch. And lastly, if you're looking for a brand new podcast to check out, I say brand new as if it's not 6 years old, you can check out All My Fantasy Children, a character creation, storytelling, and world-building podcast on the One Shot Podcast Network, in which every week my best friend Aaron Catano, Saez, and I take a listener-submitted prompt. We spin it into an original fantasy character and populate a shared universe, one story at a time. New episodes drop every Friday-ish at oneshotpodcast.com. Party of One is produced and edited, as always, by Jeff Stormer and Jen Frank. All music for the show comes from the song Infinite Lives by Mega Rain featuring the D&D Sluggers, and the Party of One logo is by Evan Rowland. If you'd like to inquire about advertising rates, coming onto the show as a guest, or about press coverage of the show, you can email me at partyofonepodcast@gmail.com. And finally, before we wrap things up, one last reminder to check out the Patreon and Ko-fi pages. That's patreon.com/JeffStormer and Ko-fi.com/JeffStormer starting October 1st for our annual pledge drive. Like I said, we're going to have some cool stuff rolling out, some exclusive content, some milestone goals, including crossover episodes, sequel Party of One episodes, live shows, and other cool stuff. All of that is going to be in an effort to pay our guests more and pay ourselves for our time. That is patreon.com/JeffStormer and Ko-fi.com/JeffStormer. And I think that's all we do here. So until next time, thank you so much for listening. Remember to fight the forces of fascism every single day. Remember that self-love and self-care are radical and defiant acts of resistance. And as always, party on, everybody.